Yeah. So the reason I wanted to just present this is that, well, let me first tell you why I think I might have something to offer with this is that I did my economics degree and my MBA from MIT, and I also did computer science. So I feel like with Bitcoin, you need to kind of understand those two sides of the academic fields, let's say, to actually understand it. I've written about Bitcoin in Wired magazine, and I sometimes give talks. And this is just a talk that I had prepared actually about 2 years ago to some MBA students in the UK. And I just thought that it might be useful because I know that some of you didn't really get it so much, or it's not that clear this morning for some of it. Although it was a very good, good discussion and presentations as well. So Bitcoin, as we heard earlier, is the most, perhaps the most important invention in the history of the world since the internet. And we can obviously say the internet was hugely important. So the proponents of Bitcoin say, that it's the people's currency and it's a way for us to get power back to the people. The people who are against Bitcoin talk about it and say it's a Ponzi scheme. Okay, so what is Bitcoin? I can show you a 1-minute video, which probably a lot of you have seen, but I think it's really like the dummy's guide to what is
Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first decentralized digital currency. Bitcoins are digital coins you can send through the internet. Compared to other alternatives, Bitcoins have a number of advantages. Bitcoins are transferred directly from person to person via the net, without going through a bank or clearinghouse. This means that the fees are much lower. You can use them in every country. Your account cannot be frozen, and there are no prerequisites or arbitrary limits. Let's look at how it works. Several currency exchanges exist where you can buy and sell Bitcoins for dollars, euros, and more. Your Bitcoins are kept in your digital wallet on your computer or mobile device. Sending Bitcoins is as simple as sending an email, and you can purchase anything with Bitcoin. The Bitcoin network is secured by individuals called miners. Miners are rewarded newly generated Bitcoins for verifying transactions. After transactions are verified, they are recorded in a transparent public ledger. Bitcoin opens up a whole new platform for innovation. The software is completely open source and anyone can review the code. Bitcoin is changing finance the same way the web changed publishing. When everyone has access to a global market, great ideas flourish. Bitcoins are a great way for businesses to minimize transaction fees. It doesn't cost anything to start accepting them, and it's easy to set up. There are no chargebacks, and you'll get additional business from the Bitcoin economy. For more information about Bitcoin, visit weusecoins.com.
Okay, so that's a bit about Bitcoin in a 1-minute summary. But so just to continue with that, so what is Bitcoin? Or how are they released or created or whatever? They're mined by people, I would just say that are cracking a complex maths problem. And they use very powerful machines to do this, specialized machines. You can't really do it just with your laptop anymore. I think that was the early days. Bitcoin, the value, as we saw earlier, I mean, it has just gone ballistic, and that's what people, always talk about. This was from 2012 to 2013, went to over $1,000. Now it's around 200. How big is Bitcoin? As I said, this is an old presentation, but it's big. There's a whole lot of transactions happening in Bitcoin. Because I'm from the UK, there was a survey recently about what people thought about Bitcoin. And what was interesting to me was that 40% of UK respondents trusted Bitcoin as much as the pound. So, and 38% think it's the currency of the future. So actually, you can see that there's a need for, for some kind of new currency. The main reason I think that the pain point that Bitcoin is actually solving is this. If I'm in the US and I'm using a UK credit card to make a payment, all these different agencies are involved. There's my bank, say I'm paying in a restaurant, there's my bank involved, the restaurant's bank, there's some foreign exchange trading going on, there's some short-term debt instruments, there's some UK and US treaties, and there's clearinghouses. So all these people are involved in just me buying some food in a restaurant. If I'm going to pay someone, do you want to sit down? By contrast, if I decide to pay you, we just decide I need to pay you some money, A pays B, I'm just doing it directly peer-to-peer, people-to-people through Bitcoin. And that's the amazing thing. And here, this is a picture of somebody paying somebody else directly through their mobile phone using Bitcoin. So why is it the first digital currency to go mass? I mean, we see, okay, a lot of Bitcoin is traced back to Friedrich Hayek, who was is from the Austrian School of Economics. So in the 1970s, I mean, he really was against central banks being in charge of currencies. And as we've seen throughout history, when governments control money, you get very high peaks and troughs of inflation. Because governments use money and use currency for political reasons. They'll print money to get votes, they'll devalue, they'll do all kinds of things just for their political base. So what are the innovative things that Bitcoin have done? So, I mean, why is Bitcoin so innovative? It's a money supply that grows at a steady state that is predictable, and then it is fixed. So every 10 minutes, 25 Bitcoins are released, and no more than 21 million Bitcoins will exist after 2040. It's based on trust. Bitcoin is actually an innovation in trust. That's all you need to know. And how is it done? It's done through this thing called cryptography, which means that there is an encryption that happens, which means that you don't need the middleman. It is cutting out the middleman. Okay, Bitcoin's not backed by anything. It's not backed by the state, it's not backed by gold, maybe it's backed by love. But actually it's backed by maths. Okay, so in maths we trust, we have elected to put our faith and money into a mathematical framework that is free of politics, it's free of human error. This is one of the Winklevoss twins who invested in Facebook, or no, who created Facebook. As Chris Dixon from Anderson says, there are 3 eras of currency: commodity-based, politically based, and now a maths-based currency system. The 4th innovation that Bitcoin has disrupted, let's say, is that it's a currency that comes not from a country, and it's not from a company. It's this beautiful story of a guy, or we don't know who, but a bunch of guys called Satoshi Nakamoto. We don't know who he is. He wrote this whole beautiful, great system and then gave it to all of us to use as we go. And we still don't know who he is.
So like God, we'll have to imagine all the images.
We'll have churches to Bitcoin and temples and mosques. The 5th innovation is that it's open source, right? It's democratic. It's always being improved. And that it's secure because it's being collectively, every transaction that's happening is being collectively monitored by the Bitcoin network. So what about governance, you might say? So there's something called the Bitcoin Foundation. There's a lead developer called Gavin Anderson, who this Satoshi guy or guys handed over apparently the reins to. But the big thing is that there's hackers and coders verifying each transaction that happens. The 6th innovation is that it's completely transparent. So it's the opposite to a Swiss bank account. You can completely see every transaction that's happened. And there's also anonymity on the actual person that's doing. The 7th innovation is it's a global currency, so that your fees are really low. I mean, right now, obviously, if you make a payment here for that.
Just tell me one thing. On the one hand, it's anonymous. But if somebody does something wrong, and one can trace the person then eventually, correct?
Yeah.
That's what I understood. Because, while for general public it may be anonymous, but if suppose somebody is playing with drugs or something like that, and they want to trace the transactions and how
So
would happen. Because today major concern of everyone is that there are great advantages to that, but this is what Silk Route has happened, this has happened. So what would be answer to those kind of questions possibly?
You know, I'll give the answer that Amir Taki, who was one of the Bitcoin hackers, gave at a talk that I did in London. He said the rich have had the tools to money launder for hundreds of years. Now, what we're doing is giving these tools to everyone. We're democratizing the tools. So, it's a protocol for money. Bitcoin, and is it a threat to government?
What I understand is that it's something like cash. Now, if it's better than cash, because if you hand over money in cash, you can never find a trace because it's just gone. It's possession based and it can move from place to place. Here, if you find a trace, at least you can find some trail. It's more traceable than the cash.
Yes.
That's the comparative way in which one can possibly look at.
And that's the reason the Silk Road founders are behind
someone
that.
has faked your email address, so you can track it, right?
It's traced, but it's traceable to an identity that you created.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily your identity.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So
PC
your
I can have a second
identity
identity.
could be
Well, that's
fake
called
that
nominee
you
shareholding
created,
in most of the
but it's traceable
known
to
names.
that.
I mean,
That's
theory,
a private
networks
dynamic
are
transactions.
anonymous, right? I mean, any network, it's all pipeline, it's hardwired network that we're using around the world. So, I mean, in theory, if you were targeted, anything can be found out about you.
And how is cash not anonymous?
To your computer, not to you.
Not to me. What if I make you buy my computer and then do it?
Possible, yeah.
But what if you hold my cash? It's the same debate, right? If
Point
you're
is,
holding my cash for my beneficial
I
interest.
bought it from you. I mean, if I buy it from somebody, I mean, there's a trail, right?
There's a trail that's always there. It never goes away. You cannot destroy that trail. So in that way, it's very secure.
Yeah.
I'm basically finished. Is it a threat to governments and banks? I mean, some central banks were scared about it. Is it? Chamak Palapitiya, big investor in the US, says that it's doing banking better than the bankers. It's money 2.0. Bitcoin will do to banks what email do to the postal industry, Bill Gates. People think it's fantastic. Many people think it's fantastic. I'm not going to do this. It's launched a whole lot of ecosystem of evangelists and investors, of secure wallets, of mining as a service, chip manufacturers. You can have ATMs now. You can take out money, Bitcoin. It's it's pretty big. So, part of the reason why I wanted to do this today was to get from you whether this explains it in any way that is easy to understand and an overview that you can get. Because I think what's so difficult about Bitcoin is to explain it simply to people. What tends to happen is it gets complicated and then people go, I don't understand it, I'm not going to use it. I work in marketing for tech startups, and I wanted to try and make Bitcoin more understandable for Bitcoin startups, but actually just so people could understand what Bitcoin is. So I just wanted some feedback from you if you think this was understandable.
Yeah, I thought the 5 innovations kind of paints a nice picture of what it's useful for and how it could be useful.
Yeah. But you knew a bit about it. So
you have to kind of forget what you know and then put it neutrally.
Yeah.
Because I understood it, but I knew it.
I think Ron was a bit confused as well.
Yeah. So I'm just going to stop it then. But, if you have any. This is on SlideShare. If anyone wants to grab it. See, it's got 49,000 views. So I think that there's an interest